First, here in our beloved Philippines for 6 years. After that, she went to Turkey and worked there for 2 years. Then in Vietnam for 3 years. China for 1 year. And now her 8th year in India. She was also a resource speaker in Malaysia, China, Mongolia, and India, to name a few. She is also good in sports because she is a volleyball coach and a good badminton player. She viewed her roles and responsibilities as coach. COACH. C stands for connect. Reach out to staff and students to establish ongoing professional relationship. O, open door. Be available to offer support and encouragement. A, advocate. Lead the overarching mission of the school, our team goal and practices relevant to my role. C, collaborate. Work productively together as a team, building each other up to develop better teamwork. H, highlight educators. Put a spotlight on educators who share their expertise and best practices to support others. At a young age, marami na siyang napatunayan and she is always ready to extend a helping hand to a lot of people, but she remains humble. She is a loving mother, a responsible daughter, a friend, and an achiever. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker, Miss Maria Cristina Pehi.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Sol. I'm so
Welcome po.
it's so overwhelming the way that you introduced me, but thank you so much for such an amazing introduction. And good morning po sa inyong lahat. Just to mention the time here. The time here is about 6:10 a.m. I really kind of chose this time because I'm not yet in school. I don't want to mix my work time plus the time that I will be with you so that I can be free as well. So thank you for inviting me and for making me a part of your session as well. Can I start presenting na po?
Yes po, Ma'am Fina.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and hopefully you will gain something from my session today. I'm trying to record the screen, but we'll see how much I will be able to record. And then I'll just send you whatever was recorded. Are you able to see my screen? Are you seeing my screen, Ate?
Not yet po.
Yeah, ayan.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes po.
Yes po,
All right.
yes po.
Thank you. So I will be sharing a few tips for you. I'm not gonna be teaching you the how to use apps, but this would be more of strategies on how you can support your students. So that's why I said designing digital learning environment to support all students. But I'm not gonna go through the how-to of each of the things that I'm using. So earlier, before I asked Ate Sol to give you a pre-survey, and I asked a couple of things because I know that in the Philippines you're doing modular and online teaching, which I'm actually impressed that you are able to do two kinds of teaching because it's so challenging doing hybrid while you're supporting students, sending them modular lessons, and at the same time some of your students are doing online learning. So it's kind of splitting teachers into more than two, I believe, because you're like you know, as you're supporting individual students, you're also trying to do different ways of teaching, which I'm not sure if the Philippines is really prepared for. But of course, being resilient as we are, we just do whatever we can. And that's something that I'm always saying. Filipinos are so resilient and we do whatever we can to do our job. Yeah. So when I ask you to do the pre-survey, I'd like to know what are the things that you are successful at in modular teaching. And some of you have mentioned that it's more convenient to teachers because yeah, it's supposed to be more convenient to teachers. Some of you said that. And students are still managing to do the activities given by you. Parents are realizing that it's their role is important in education as well because they are, of course, supporting their children. And then I was looking at what about the challenges, and then some of you have mentioned. I was just taking note of some of the things. Failure in self-study. Parents were the ones who answered the modules, and I can testify to that because even my nephew was like, I'm telling my sister-in-law, why are you the one answering when your child is supposed to be the one doing that? So yeah, I'm not gonna go through all of these things. The reason why I ask is so that I can see what we can do together so that we can somehow solve a few problems that we encounter when we're doing modular teaching and online teaching as well. So I'm just gonna give a brief background why I mentioned about all these things, because when I'm supporting teachers, I'm now I don't have my own classes anymore. I only support teachers. I train them to use different applications, and then I join their classes to observe, to give suggestions, to give recommendations, and if I need to support, I also co-teach. So the basic things that I would like to see in the classroom would be how are the students interacting, learning with teachers. So there's how are they engaging with each other, student to teacher? How are the students being more independent in learning? So student to self-management, self-study. Is that happening? And then student to student learning as well. So sometimes when we teach, we tend to just focus on the individual child, but there are so many ways that students can learn from each other, and sometimes we're not able to do that because of the way that our lessons are presented. Sometimes in modular, there's the tendency of only the child learning by himself or with the teachers, but the student to student part is missing. So that's the background of why I designed this lesson. First of all, there are 4 things that I'm going to be talking about today. One would be learning objectives. When you are designing your lessons, I'm sure that you are presenting the learning objectives with the students, but hopefully at the same time, it is confirmed and clarified with the students where they understand that these are the things that we are learning together. And then I understand also from my interview with Ate Sol that you're also doing single point rubric, which is really good because then the students will check where am I struggling and where am I good at. And then also I mentioned to Ate Sol that another thing that I introduced is the use of task table plus help desk. So in this, I'm going to be exploring with you how it looks like. And then assessment, as we are teaching, we give assessment to evaluate the learning experiences of our students. But then do we give them also the opportunity to reflect, self-reflect, and give feedback to each other? So we're going to unpack each of this. This is an example of a learning objective that we have. So we have the big idea or the big picture. What's the main thing that we are learning together? We follow the PYP structure. Probably some of you are familiar with it. And so with that big idea, we unpack the details. So we have the inquiry, sometimes 3 to 4 specific details that we discuss with students, or we learn together with students. And then, so my role is coaching in terms of digital learning. So right now I'm coaching the ICT teacher. And these are some of the things that I recommended to her. So students will learn to use Minecraft. Probably some of you are also incorporating Minecraft in your lessons. And then other than the use of technology, we have to always go back to the learning objectives. How are we incorporating technology in such a way that it is enhancing the learning objectives or what the students are meant to learn? So sometimes we get to be so fancy that the technology comes first, but it should not. We should always go back to what are we supposed to learn, and then how is technology going to support that learning? Because I'm not teaching anymore and I'm supporting more of the teachers, when I do my session, I normally have 2 to 3 agenda that I would like to discuss with them. So if you're using Google Classroom, I hope that you are posting the learning objectives with your students, or at least some points that will guide them. What are we going to learn? What are we going to discuss? So that they have sort of idea. For example, sometimes students know that they are learning 1, 2, 3 things. But if I am coming from outside, say I am observing your class, I would not know what you and the students are learning together. So it helps when you post something. If you're not using Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, at least have a board where you have these 3 points that you are learning together, so that anyone who will come into your class or who will ask any of your students will know that you are learning those things. So that's one thing. I hope we're clear with the learning objectives, making sure that students understand what you are learning together. And then, and even not just the students, anyone who will visit your class will understand, oh, okay, they're talking about, say, for example, settlements. They're talking about the history of so-and-so. They're talking about this math strategy. So done with the learning objective, making clear that students understand what you're talking about or what you're learning together. And then the use of a single point rubric. I really love the use of single point rubric because you're focused on what are the things that you will be discussing with your students, what would you like your students to be able to do, and the content that you will be discussing with them. So for example, the first 3 things over here are the content of your lesson, but then the last 2, I incorporated the self-reflection so that the students will reflect on what he or she is doing and say, what am I good at? What are the things that I need to improve upon? So on the left side, you're seeing growth, areas that need improvement, so that you or the child can check. These are the things that I need more help. These are the things that I exceed or I am able to do. Sometimes they will only meet the target, and that's okay. But it's more of supporting the child himself or herself. It's not comparing sometimes we have the tendency to compare who's the top of the class, who's the bottom, and something like that. And so when you use the single point rubric, the focus is the individual child. And then on the last two rows, you will notice that I have something for self-reflection where the child will reflect what are the things that I'm really good at and what are the things that I need improvement. And then the last part is to make sure that children are learning from each other as well. So the purpose of tag feedback is, first, the T is to tell something positive about your friend's work. Sometimes you can do pair up and say, okay, have a look at your friend's work, tell me something positive about your friend's work, and then ask relevant question about your friend's work. That's A. And then G is to give suggestion to your friend. Sometimes we have students who are better than others, but they can actually support each other and say, here's what I will do if I were you. Something like that. Okay, so that's the strategy on how students will learn from each other. And then you can interrupt me if you feel like, oh, you have a question or something, so that because I'm not actually seeing you when I'm presenting. I'm focused on this one. Probably I could split the screen so that I can, see a little bit of you. Just to make sure that I'm not talking to myself only. You can interrupt me at any point if you feel like, oh, there's something you need to clarify, for example. Okay. I was trying to join with two devices, but it's doing some feedback. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on with task table. I mentioned two things earlier. First is the learning objectives. The second is single point rubric. Now, this is something that I introduced with one of the teachers that I was coaching. So when you create a help desk, it's just like a checklist. So you go through what are the things that my students need, what are the things that I would like my students to do, and then what am I gonna do if my student is really good, done with the work, because some of them are really more able than others. So just making sure that you're supporting your students at whatever level they have. The help desk is for the students who are struggling, who needs to do it again. Sometimes you give instructions to students and they don't get it the first time, or you do your mini lessons and they don't get it the first time. Normally we do, because we have hands-on exercises, and students will need, for example, to learn how to log into Minecraft, and then they're like going to ask, teacher, I did not get it, how do I do it again? So if you create a help desk, normally I will record mini video, 1 minute or a maximum 2 minutes, so that the students can go back to that. And I'm gonna show you an example of that in a bit. And then the task one is for those students who understood how to either understood the lesson or understood the hands-on task. Then the second column, the task one, is they are ready to do their work. And then the task two is, once they are done, what could be done next? So we say, check your content, make sure that you have the correct items, or make sure that you have done your work well. So checking, self-check is also important. And then sometimes we ask them, share a screenshot of what you have done, so that there's the learning evidence. Sometimes students will say, I'm done, miss, but then they are really not. So a good example for them to be able to show that they're really done is to send you a screenshot. Sometimes you just ask them, take a photo of your work so that I can check that later. Okay, so here's an example of a mini video that I created. This is less than 1 minute. So let's have a look at this.
To start, you have to search for Minecraft Education Edition, which is already downloaded to your device. So I'm gonna search and I'm gonna type Minecraft Education Edition, wait for it to load, and then once it's loaded, you have to click on sign in, and then you have to use your school email to start signing in to Minecraft Education Edition. Once it's done, enter your password and then click on OK, and then you may start playing.
So you may notice it's less than 1 minute, and then I chop down the videos into different videos. So for example, I had a different video on how the students will be using Minecraft Control. I have a different video on how they will be using camera and portfolio. And this is because sometimes they only need this parcel. I only need, for example, to support the student in how to log in. Some of them might only need to use, how do I use the basic controls, miss? How do I use the camera? But if you created a long video with all of these things, maybe half an hour, and then they will be like struggling to search which part they need. So that's why I just love to chunk my videos into 1 minute or maximum of 2 minutes. So that's one tip. Create mini videos for your children. And then I have a few suggestions on ways to record your screen. If you're using MacBook like me, you may record your screen using screen time. There's a shortcut for that. So when you use Command Shift and number 5. I'm not sure if some of you are using MacBook, but just in case. So you're noticing that I'm recording my presentation right now. You're seeing this recording button. And then there are also other applications. Don't worry about taking note of this, because this book I'm going to be sharing with you all after my session. I actually shared this with Ate Sol already, so she has a copy of this presentation as well. So you might want to check on Flipgrid. Flipgrid will be able to help you record your screen. It's a free app that you can use with your any device. If you have your computer, if you have your phone, you can use Flipgrid. Loom is also another application that you might want to check on how you can use Loom for screen recording. Screencastify is another one, and I'm using all of this. You can add Loom as part of your Chrome extension. You might want to use Screencastify. It's up to you. Both are okay. Both are good. And then another one is Screencast-O-Matic. Whatever device you have, all of this will work. Flipgrid, Loom, Screencastify, or Screencast-O-Matic. When you click on this, they are linked. Wait, hang on. So when I send you this presentation, when you click, it's gonna go through that application so that you don't need to find and search for Loom, because these are already linked together. Okay, so here's an example. Thank you so much, Hazel. So here's an example of self-assessment that we ask the students to do. So when you start asking your students to assess their learning, there are two things that you might just want to ask them. What are you proud of, or what did you do well? And then what will you do better next time? Even when they are doing examinations, ask them to go through their test papers and say, what did you do well? And then what do you think you will do better next time? Because if they are the ones who are checking on their work and really looking at, I could have done better in this. If I have just read through the question really well, I could have answered the questions properly. So those are two things. When even if you're not doing product or project, you may still ask your students to reflect on their understanding. And then after this, you can ask them to set goals. So for example, they only did 50% for their math assessment, and then ask them, how are you going to do next time? What is your target for next time? Some of them might say, I'd like to do about 60%. I'd like to reach 75%, and have them note down their goals. And then again, when the next assessment come, you can ask them, how are you doing this time? So hopefully we are taking time to do these things with our students, because sometimes I know that we are so conscious about making sure that we cover all the content, but we also need to pause sometimes and say, am I really supporting my students, or what do they need more from you as educators? So that's the self-assessment bit. And then giving feedback, as I have mentioned earlier, I'm using Flipgrid as well to collect student feedback for each other. So as I have mentioned, we are using tag feedback to tell something positive about children telling positive about each other, asking relevant question, and then giving suggestion. And I'm going to show you an example of a child who did that, of how we ask the children to give feedback to each other. It's inspiring when they see their friends recognizing that they did beautiful work. And I use Wakelet to curate. Again, Wakelet is also free, and I can share you a link to Wakelet later if you want to explore that more. So Wakelet is like Padlet. If you're familiar with Padlet, it works just the same thing, where you can add photos, you can add videos, you could add whatever website link that you would like. So this is an example of that. I'm just gonna open this as well so that you can see how it looks like. So this is like a curation tool where students will be able to show their screenshot of their work, not just screenshot, but also type in their reflection or assessment of themselves. So this will help you to minimize your time, collecting everything yourself. Sometimes you would like to ask your students to send you photos or journals or whatever work you'd like them to send you, and you're the one collecting them and putting them maybe in a folder. But if you have a curation tool like Wakelet, you can ask them to do it themselves. So you can just create a Wakelet and then ask the students to fill in their content, have them put their own work, so that it's gonna be on their hands. It is their work and not yours anymore. You will just seeing the work being populated on the Wakelet. So as you may notice, not just photos, but text as well. Yeah. PDF and even videos. So you can basically curate any content using Wakelet. I'm gonna go back to my presentation, which is this one. Okay. Hazel, you want to ask something? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, ask ko lang po, ma-maximize po ba namin ang gamit ng OER po na Wakelet or Padlet kahit po naka-pre-account siya? Kasi pag pre-account, di ba po may mga limitations?
Yes, I understand that. Right now, Padlets will only allow you to create 3. But Wakelet is free. You can have as many curations as you want. So the good thing about the applications that I'm recommending, they are free. So Wakelet and Flipgrid, both of them are free. You can use as many times as possible. You don't need to pay. You don't need to, worry about the limitations that, I can only create 3 curations and that's it, over for free. So yeah, I'm gonna share, this is Wakelet. I'm just gonna do that on the And I could also curate a few things that I can share with you all. Wait, hang on. Where is my chat? I'm gonna share that in a bit later. I'm for some reason I'm not able to see the chat, but if you also search for wakelet.com, this is that one. Thank you for your question, Hazel. Any other questions so far? Just unmute yourself and yeah, just unmute yourself and let me know, please, if you have questions from the topics that I have shared so far. So I'm gonna go back. First, we discussed about learning objectives, making sure that your learning objective is clarified with your students. Sometimes I'm asking the students, what would you like to learn other than this 2-3 things? What would you like to learn? And some of them are saying, Miss, I'm really good at creating videos. Can I share my understanding by creating video? Or some of them are really good with art. And then some of them will say, can I do sketch notes, Miss? Because I'm not really good at expressing myself in other ways. I'm not good at writing. I'm not good at talking. So can I just make sketches? And we say, sure. If you can express your learning better in different ways, why not? So learning objectives, making sure that it's clear with the student. Try to create single point rubric and incorporate not just the content of your lesson, but also how are they going to self-assess, so the children will know that they are accountable to their own learning. And then peer-to-peer, so that they are also learning from each other. You can also use Wakelet for peer-to-peer feedback and assign them by pair, for example, or by team. Sometimes if the groups are like too big, like we're teaching 30 students and we don't want to receive like 30 feedback, what we do is to just split them into 4 teams, have the teams give feedback to each other. So if there are 4 teams, then you will only receive 4 feedback. And sometimes you might also want to ask them to give feedback to each other. Are all members of your team really doing the work? And then they will say, I did most of the work and some of my team members did not. So you will try to facilitate a mini discussion with them, saying what is the problem, how can we do better next time. So that's the single point rubric. And then the use of help desk to make sure that students will be able to go back to what you have taught them or what you have discussed. And then again, I'll show you again this help desk. So 3 columns for help desk. The first one is to support the struggling students who might want to check back again, either your lesson or how to use what tool. You don't necessarily have to do screen recording all the time. When you go to YouTube, there are so many resources that you can already use, so that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And then you might also just want to say, I'd like you to watch this YouTube video for the first few minutes, because that's the only part that you might want your students to learn. Or sometimes you might want to point, you know how in PowerPoint you can just choose the timing, where you will set the timing to the 3 minutes up to 5 minutes, for example. So that's just 2 minutes. So set that with the students. Limit what you would like your students to watch. And then the second column is once the students are ready to do their task. And then the third column would be for those students who are really, really good in what they do, that you might want to give them extended work. So for example, they're done with their assessment, they're done with their project, they're done with whatever task you're doing in the class, then you can make an extension work. Okay, And then the last bit would be self-assessment, and then peer-to-peer feedback. Okay, so any more questions? Ate, ask me.
Magtanong po kayo. Ano yung gusto po ninyo itanong? Ayan na si ma'am.
Ako po, madaming tanong. Pasensya na po.
Sure, Hazel. Hazel, go.
Yes po. Going back to Minecraft, ma'am.
Yes.
I have a 10-year-old son na Minecraft player. And I can see him, ewan ko po kung educational yung ginagawa niya, but I can see him parang naglalaro sa mga building and creating, parang may mga ano pa nga, yung malalaglag siya or something like that. He even told me that he created one parang mini game. And told me na marami daw nag-likes, no? So, yes po. So, ang aking, may mga words po siya na ginagamit na hindi ko po naiintindihan. So, my question is, sa social studies po kasi, since multidisciplinary po kami, no? Ano po kayang masasuggest nyo na, what particular social studies content, subject po or topic po na that Minecraft will be
Useful.
we can use it in our lesson or in our topic.
Really
Ano po?
good question, Hazel. Thank you so much for that question. You know, in some of the social studies lessons, you can actually ask them to create settlements. You know, how does it look like? Right now, yung grade 3 students namin, we ask them to create a school. And then, because in Minecraft, you can use non-playing characters. So, pwede kang maglagay ng mga characters, like different people, and then interaction as well. So, you can ask them to create dialogues. You can ask them to build a city, for example. What is a sustainable city looking like? What should be there? Because in Minecraft, you have everything that you can see on Earth and more. Sometimes you might want to just start saying, what would be your dream house? And then create that using Minecraft. And then what would be a sustainable house? What resources would you use? What kind of wood? And then concretes, for example. Some of them are creating their ideal house because they don't have that yet. They want to have a swimming pool. They want to have garage, for example. And it's really a good way to visualize what you would like for students to do and be able to create. So settlement could be one thing. You can ask them to do research on a particular city. How does it look like in Mumbai? Search about Mumbai and then recreate that in a Minecraft world. And then extend that to, okay, you're seeing that that city has problems with pollution. What will you do to solve pollution problem in Mumbai, for example? Right? So you're targeting not just your content, but at the same time the creativity and communication of your children. And then who knows, someday they will be architects and engineer and whatnot, you know. So it's giving them more opportunity, not just learning about the content, but they will be like, oh, I want to have a city that will give me more, you know, trees. Then, you know, in some of the schools that I worked with, they presented that to the governor and said something like, this is something that we're envisioning a sustainable city is, or this is what we're envisioning our town should be. We probably should have more trees so that there's no flood. We probably should have a better pipeline so that we're solving issues with flooding. And although they are just simulated things, but you're seeing that your students are thinking beyond what they're learning. I'm seeing some chat. I'm gonna just focus on this one so that I can see what is here. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Adele Rose, for your messages. Yes, building concepts. Definitely po, Sir Hannibal. Yes, it looks like Lego. And sometimes if your students don't know how to use Minecraft, you can even just start with Lego if they have it at home. Yeah. Urban planning, yes, definitely, Hazel. Yes, for sure. Marwin Joseph, yes, you can. Anything is possible. Any more questions? Ate, do you have a question for me?
Magtanong na po kayo. Tanong na po. Maraming mga tanong yan, ma'am. Nahihiya lang. Ma'ams.
I'm gonna remove this bit for security purposes. I'm gonna remove that before I share this with you, this presentation. I'll share this now. Oh, this is one of my favorite tool pala, Book Creator then. And I'm gonna share some resources on Book Creator as well with you if you like. Wait, okay, here. Yan. So, yan po yung presentation ka. Ooh! So, wow! Really, this is good that your pamangkin is like kumikita na ng $15. Woo! Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I understand, Sir Hannibal. Ako din, I'm not really good at Minecraft. I'm actually learning from children. I actually asked my daughter, "Can you teach me how to do that?" Because it's so difficult for me to build, or sometimes I tend to break instead of build. Yeah, but well, that's something that you probably have to regulate. Yung puyatan. Yes. Yes. I could give you wait, hang on. I'm gonna search for resources in Minecraft, resources in Book Creator, resources for Wakelet. Kasi wala yun dun sa presentation ka. So I'll collect all those things. I'll share those things with Ate Sol so that you might have more ideas on how can I start using Minecraft if I'm not really good at it. You know what I do sometimes? If there are children who are good at it, I let them do it. I was like, okay, since I know that you're really good in Minecraft, how about you teach us? You can also teach me, something like that. You know. So use the strength of your children. Okay, if you don't have any more questions, I'm gonna go ahead with the last part of my presentation, which is I'm gonna ask you to do a little bit for me. I'm gonna ask you for your takeaway from this session. So you can talk about what can you resonate with, what do you think is something that you felt you can relate with, what are you excited to explore, if you have your aha moment, or you have something that changed, perspectives that change after this session. I used to think, now I think, something like that. So I'm gonna be sharing that link with you. And if you could give me some feedback, that will be great. Here, please. Oh, okay. Christina said, I've got an idea sa question ni Ma'am Hazel. One topic in her lesson is feudalism and manorialism during Middle Age period. So using Minecraft, it's possible that instead of visualizing the community setup during that period, we can let students build the layout of Middle Age community using Minecraft. Yes, absolutely. And then you can just ask the children, research first. And if, for example, some of them may not have devices, then team them up, team up with, at least for sure, in one team, there should be at least one student who has a device, and then the rest can help with the work. Yes. So I shared a link for you. If you could tell me.
Excuse me, Ma'am Tina.
Yes po.
Question ko po,
Yeah.
paano kaya yung halimbawa nakagawa kami ng Minecraft, nakagawa kami ng activity based on what you teach, paano po kaya namin ito maituturo sa yung mga yung mga bata na limited ang kanilang gadget, internet,